We have such a great panel assembled for you today. Let me begin. It's Melissa Pedersen, Senior VP at Westcom Credit Union. Melissa.
Good afternoon.
Suzanne Trepp, Investment Research Analyst at Western Asset. And Nataya Walker, social entrepreneur and media professional, also the executive director and founder of Seeds of Fortune. So the first question, ladies, for all of you is, what is fiscal literacy?
Well, I'll kick it off. I'll go ahead and kick it off. Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here with all of you. Really, it's about setting, both long-term and short-term goals, staying disciplined, understanding what you have coming in versus what's going out, what you're spending, other expenses. But I think for me personally, it's important to be, super realistic about what you intend to do with your money. If you like to shop, budget for that. It's okay. Just make sure that that's balanced, that it's balanced. I'll let the other panelists have a comment there.
Okay, Nataya, we're going to go to you at this point. Fiscal literacy, what does it mean?
Well, fiscal literacy means, to me personally, is really understanding what you want to do with your money and having goals aligned with that. When I was in high school, I used to read like real estate books, and I know I'm like I was a weird high schooler.
I would say that's not the norm, I would think. For people
not the normal, but I would, at that time, it's like the power of television, honestly, because I was watching like Bravo, $1 Million Listing, and I was just like, wow, like the idea to like own your own property, and like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to have like this little money jar that is for my long-term goals. And like, I know I want to go to college, and that's a cost. Let me put a little envelope away for that. So just being very intentional about the money that is coming in, and then aligning goals with that money. Because especially like when you're in high school and college, it's very easy to see that money walk out the door. You're just like, oh, I'm going to like get something to eat, or I'm going to go shopping today. And then all of a sudden you end up with zero.
Nataya, so what do you think then is the biggest mistake young people make with their money if they have it?
I think the biggest mistake that young people make with their money when they have it is really not having a goal attached to that money. So like when I was in high school, especially, I'm from New York, Brooklyn, New York particularly, especially in high school. New York is like the fashion capital of the world. So it was a lot of peer pressure to like buy the latest thing. And it's probably even more so with social media right now. All we had back in the day was like MySpace. When I was in high school.
We all remember MySpace, okay.
Back in the day, you only had one photo on MySpace, but just the peer pressure of like wanting to be fashionable, wanting to be accepted. I spent $500, me and my best friend, on Louis Vuitton sneakers. And we like sat down with each other and we're just like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is a waste of money. Like, what?
Okay, before I get to the other ladies, did you take them back or did you wear them and enjoy them?
I wore them and enjoyed them. I still have them to this day. I like pull them out the closet every now and then to show, the kids that I'm still hip. But after that was a really big defining moment for me, that $500, I was like, you know what? Like, I love, Louis Vuitton, but I am not going to make Louis Vuitton richer and me poorer. And that was like a definitive moment. And then the teenage bank accounts, you can only take out like $500 a day at that time. So I had to go to 2 different banks to try to get them.
You had to pay for the tax, correct?
Yes, it was a whole journey. And I was like, after that, no. Goals attached to the money.
So Melissa, you've just heard Nataya there. What do you think about what she said and perhaps the biggest mistake for young people?
I would have said the exact same thing Nataya said. It's about setting the mid and longer term goals and trying not to get caught up in, social media is all about, looking your best and living your best life, but is it really? And it does put the undue pressure on people to, you know, have, I'll be honest, the plant behind me wasn't there before this video. It was a little plant that's half dying. But these are things that we do to make sure that the visual of us is better. But truly, really setting those long-term priorities and making sure that your intermediate priorities are leading you to longer term.
Okay, Melissa, I'm going to go to Suzanne and ask her this question. You mentioned fiscal literacy, financial literacy. What does that mean to you?
Great question, Colleen. It really is the foundation that I think every young person needs in their life, because it helps them establish what are their priorities, what are their goals, and how are they going to get there. So no matter where you start out in life, it's really important to know yourself and know if you have a long-term plan. And if you start saving today, for example, the power of compound interest, even if you save a little bit every paycheck, every month, decades from now, with the power of compound interest, that money will be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars if you start saving every paycheck, every month, just a few $100s. It's very powerful.
All right, Suzanne, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. You mentioned compound interest. If Natalia had taken that $500 at 17 or 18 years old, invested it then, 20, 30 years down the road, what would she be looking at?
Very good question. Again, I don't have my Bloomberg terminal right here in front of me, but it would potentially be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. So again, the earlier you start saving, the more potential you have at retirement or in your 50s, and it'll provide you with so much financial flexibility to then give you all kinds of options to choose from.
Okay, I'm looking at Natalia's face. She's got to be crying thinking about that right now. But you did enjoy the shoes, correct?
Yes, I did enjoy the shoes. I was like, hundreds of thousands. Woo. You know what? Maybe I should have took them back. I don't know.
You're enjoying them. They'll be a lifelong investment, and who knows, maybe they'll appreciate. You just never know how that goes these days. So let's talk about this. You know, this is something that is typically not taught in school. So Melissa, what do you think? What are your views on that?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, Colleen. And it's a tough one to answer. You know, the educators are really tasked with teaching so many different subjects. And unfortunately, financial education doesn't always fit, and they're not able to tailor it to the subjects that they're required to teach. So there's that. And then there's also, you know, are our educators ready to teach the topic? Do they really understand from their perspective? So how are they able to educate on something that they may not be really great at either?
Natalia, what do you think? How would it have been, or did you have classes that helped you in that direction when dealing with finances and things?
Yeah, definitely. I would say one, I think in America overall, finances is kind of a taboo topic, right? So it's kind of hard people don't even want to talk about how much money they make, let alone trying to break down people's spending and savings habits, especially in the public school system. Students are coming from so many different economic statuses, and people might feel kind of outlined or outliered. But I think it's something extremely important that they should have. Particularly for me, I was a part of a program called Teens That Mean Business that was ran by my church, Emmanuel Baptist Church. And it was an internship program where they would connect you to they fundraise throughout the year to allow teenagers to work for local small businesses. So you got entrepreneurial skill sets, but then to be able to get your stipend, you had to take financial literacy courses every single Monday. So I was always kind of fascinated by like money. Obviously, I was watching Bravo, $1 Million Listing, but I didn't really understand how money actually worked. I did have a habit of saving money just because like I was always scared like, oh, money will disappear. So I'd like save little.
Where did you get that from? Did you get that from your parents or family? I mean, where did that initial drive come from with you?
I remember I wanted, I guess it all comes back to like your wants and needs. And it's like, my mom was like, I'll give you everything you need, but anything that you want outside of that, you're on your own. So I kind of understood at an early age, like if there's things that I want and I'm not hireable yet of hireable age to be able to get them, then I have to be kind of crafty on the money that does come in, saving that money. So I had like a money jar. My mom didn't even know about it. I had like a money jar from like 8 years old to like 13, and eventually she like found it, I think, when she was like helping me clean my room one day, and then we got a bank account for me with Chase Bank. But yeah, so I had like an inkling fear like, oh, this money will run out, because I knew like, okay, like I'll have food and shelter, but like if I want to do anything else, if I want clothes, like additional clothes that are not like considered necessary things, I would have to figure out a way to get those things on my own. But from participating in that financial literacy course, I really started to understand how money actually worked. And
Oh, I'm sorry. You took a breath there. I thought you were through.
oh no, I was like trying to recollect some time ago. I was like, yeah, so I understood how money worked, and it was really helpful for me because when I started my college process, they talked about student loan debt, and they had a speaker come in and talk about like the qualms of that. And I really didn't understand. I knew that college was going to cost money. I didn't know how much money at that time, but I knew that starting off life with any kind of debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, they're talking about all the debts. I was like, Lord, I don't want any of those. So that was kind of like my first introduction to like, okay, money management, there's a system to money. And the more you figure out the system to money, the more you can build wealth for yourself.
Suzanne, we teach geometry, we teach calculus, we teach all kinds of things that when you're removed 20 years from school, you don't necessarily use. Why are we not teaching financial literacy?
I wish they would. It should be part of the core curriculum before you graduate as a senior from high school. Everyone should be exposed just to the simple mechanics of finance, balancing a checkbook, signing up for accounts, and understanding all these hidden fees and all these little things that over time really add up. And as a high school senior, you really don't even know what questions to ask because that's not your job. You're assuming if you're dealing with an adult, you're dealing with a large financial institution, they have your interests in mind. They do, but they're all profit centers. And so they're trying to figure out how to maximize their value by charging hidden fees, et cetera. So the more you can educate kids to say, wait, what's this, what's that, and give them those tools, then that's going to prepare them for a lifetime of, financial stability.
Natalia, we understand that you are really different and special in that you had a hunger for all of this. But do you know where it came from? I mean, other than the fact that at 8 years old, you knew you would accumulate this wealth for some of your wants, not necessarily your needs. Was it your parents, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it was my parents. My mom and my dad were like super different. My dad was like a creative and my mom was like very business centered, but my dad had his own business. He was like one of the first Black people to have a thriving theater business on Broadway. So I would see him like operating the theater and understanding. I like always had like an interest and an inkling when it came to business. However, because it's very hard for minorities when you're such a competitive marketplace, there was very high periods of time in the theater and there was very low periods with any kind of entertainment system that you have on Broadway. And from those, I started to feel like a little bit of like the qualms of what financial instability would feel like if there was not consistent income coming in. I mean, my mom was always really good with finances. And she said that she had learned through Essence magazine, which is an African-American women's publication. And they actually have a financial empowerment section inside of the magazine. And she would read it when she would get her monthly subscriptions in. And it talked about building wealth. It talked about home ownership. And through her colleagues, she works for the New York City MTA Transit. So now you're starting to meet a lot of different people that have built wealth in different ways. And she would get advice for her colleagues when she was trying to figure out what would be the best way to build wealth for herself and for her family. And from there, I would vicariously watch kind of the differences in that, kind of like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of synopsis almost, which is a book that teenagers should definitely read. It's a very good foundational book on financial literacy, but kind of watching those different experiences, I really understood like the different systems that money could take you from a really young age. And it kind of like really impacted me and really made me interested in like money in general, how it worked. And then I ended up becoming a business major because of that.
Good for you. Melissa, credit unions. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes people make in terms of finances and banking or credit unions? I mean, I don't know that people even use checking accounts anymore, but I can remember 10 years ago running into teenagers who didn't know how to fill out a check.
Well, and that's a great question, Colleen. And I think that it, leads back to the conversation that we just had. So talking about credit unions versus banks. So, credit unions are not-for-profit financial cooperatives. So that's the super long term. But we have just the same different products and services as banks do. But because we don't have paid boards of directors, we are able to return to our members the savings of that in the ways of offering higher savings rates, lower fees, lower loan rates. And oftentimes, much like Westcom, it isn't necessarily tied to a particular select employer group or an employer group, but it is community chartered, like we are. Anyone in Southern California can be a member of Westcom.
It is daunting any way you look at it. So how do you navigate the system? Let's say you're 17, 18 years old, you're just getting out of high school. What is the first step you should take to financial literacy? Melissa, I'm going to toss that one to you.
Well, it's understanding about what you want to do with your money. The money that we have coming in is pretty finite, particularly as a younger person. And until you're able to grow in your career, you have a finite amount. So you really need to learn how to figure out, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to be able to achieve my goals? Again, it's going back to, setting things out. Natalia talked about, her mom and dad's influence. And I will tell you that my dad's influence, when I was a young person, a little bit longer ago than Natalia, that I was taught the envelope system. And I would put 10% of my paycheck into my account. So my mom and dad helped me establish an account at a bank at that time. It's before I learned about credit unions. And I would put 10% of my check in the bank. And then for everything else, I had an envelope. So if I knew I wanted to spend, X amount on food, X amount on a car payment, insurance, rent, whatever, I would put those things in that envelope. And when those envelopes were empty, Colleen, I was out of money. So that's how I learned to budget as a young person. And it does really, the parents and the educators in our schools need to help us as young people with that.
Suzanne, first step for a teenager, assuming they have some sort of income or job.
I think it's really important for them to start building up their own personal credit score. So pick, for example, one credit card. I mean, especially in this day and age, this particular generation, everything's online. I'm sure that most of them don't even have physical wallets. So pick one credit card, make sure it has the lowest annual fees, the lowest interest rate in case you need to carry a balance. But if you stay true to that and make sure that payments are on time, that you don't, again, outspend your means and maintain that, then you can start establishing a credit score that will then provide you with additional financial flexibilities and opportunities down the road. If you decide to buy an apartment, a condo, a house, etc., it all starts now. Very important.
Have goals changed for young people? I mean, it used to be the American dream was buying a house. Are you seeing it change in your business?
Definitely. So the two sectors that are taking up a lot of my time these days are the airlines and retailers. So, and the retailer that we have invested a lot in is the pet category. We're noticing that this particular generation, they're taking their time to develop their own households, if you will, but pets are a huge priority. So again, different priorities, I think. They're looking at what they want to do. They want to travel. So currently, we're obviously in the middle of a pandemic, but all the airlines are telling me that leisure travel is huge because people still want to get away. They want a change of scenery, et cetera. And I think that was a trend even before the pandemic. This particular generation is all about experiences. So for my generation, you know, we had the Gloria Vanderbilt jeans, we would collect things. This generation definitely wants to collect memories and experiences.
Natalia, your advice for young people getting out of high school, assuming they have their first job, what's the first thing you would tell your friends to do?
The first thing I would tell my friends to do right after high school is developing their money systems. So when I graduated from high school, you're gonna do a couple of things, or you're gonna either go into maybe some type of trade school, go off to college, maybe start your own business, or you're kind of figuring it out. You're figuring it out path. And with that, especially as a young adult, it's like anything that could happen will happen. Honestly, during those years, or you're going to get yourself into something on just not knowing or having enough experience. And I would say that having the checking account and having the savings account as two different accounts is very, very important. A lot of young people I see, especially coming through my program, they'll have a checking account saved up, or they'll have like a hidden account maybe that their parents have been managing for a long time without them. I love Melissa because one of the things that the program helped us do for Teens That Mean Business was that we got set up with credit union accounts. And that was very powerful, one, because we only had to have a $5 minimum balance to be able to maintain the account. So like $5 is very, very, very manageable. And then two, it put the power in our hands, because a lot of times the teen and college accounts are actually sometimes connected to parents' accounts. So parents might be monitoring your spending and seeing what's going on. So I would say if you can go to a credit union, if you can open on an online bank account, that can really put the power inside of your hands to really start to, one, build up an emergency fund if you might need it. I always tell my girls when they're going up to school, always have at least $500 in the bank if you have that much saved up already. And then you can maybe keep $100 in checking account. If you have your checking account, make sure you're putting on, when you have the overdraft protection, because teenagers are gonna, especially with doing e-commerce, is up during the pandemic. And the overdraft is a very real thing that a lot of teenagers get themselves into and get caught with those fees. They usually waive it if it's a college or teen account. But you don't want to be in that cycle. It creates bad habits. So those are some of the things I usually try to start our girls off with. One, kind of separating themselves from the parents' account. I still have that account, because if you get into something, if your parents have those means. Also, if they're coming from a low income family, maybe your first generation, you might have been using check cashing places, or you've seen that as a habit. And this is a time, I forgot what the stat was. I don't know if it was like 6 million Americans are not in a formalized banking system. I feel like that I'm quoting that, but do you know what, Colleen? There's like a certain percentage of Americans that are on an unformalized banking system.
I don't know the specific number, but I think the one thing that I'm hearing from all of you right now is that even as a teenager, you need to develop some sort of relationship with your bank or your credit union. And I see you all nodding yes here. Melissa.
Vigorously, absolutely. And, you know, they will help you, and they will help guide you through your life stages. You know, so as a young,
walking in and developing a relationship with someone at a particular branch.
That's right, because they have your best interest at heart. It's about making sure that they're asking you the right questions and really learning what are your goals, so that way they can make recommendations and how to move on in your financial future and be successful as you age.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out to all of you. What is the best time to get your first job? I mean, when should parents like sort of push you out of the nest? Because it's daunting. I mean, if you think you're about 15 or 16 years old, you're going in, you're filling out an application, that's something new to you. So when should you really be pushing your child or pushing yourself to get your first job? And Melissa, you're up right now, so I'm gonna toss that to you first.
Well, I will talk about myself and my career. So I've been at Westcom for 30 years. I started when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And it has been a fantastic career. I started as a teller, and I worked my way up through the organization, and I've been given great opportunities. You know, I have 2 stepsons, and I will encourage them to get a job. So their number one job is really school right now. But as having a part-time job, I think that teaches great responsibility, and then also helps them to understand what it means to be in the workforce and be a productive member of society.
Natalia, what do you think? Give me an age here.
I was able to get my first formalized job my freshman year of high school summer. I think the summers are a great time to explore and get some work experience under your belt. I think it's very important to start the earlier the better. I definitely think during the school year it might be a little distracting unless you just need to, because you're just trying to bring in extra income or whatever your financial situation is. It could be a little distracting during the school year, but definitely during the summer months, you can rack up $1,000 to $2,000 and put that aside and be able to sustain yourself through the school year. So I would say the earlier the better. I was able to use a lot of my high school internship or work experiences to land my first college internship. It's very difficult as a freshman in college to get an internship. They're looking for somebody with experience, so they typically take juniors. And if you have some experience in high school, that helps you to be able to level the playing field for yourself.
Suzanne.
Well, I can speak from experience. I have 2 teenage boys, and when my eldest boy was 16 years old, he had this passion, still has a passion for drones. And so he was learning a lot, he was spending a lot of money, and I said, wait a minute, you have all this knowledge now, and you're spending all this money. Let's figure out a way for you to harness all of that and potentially get a job. And fortunately, we live in West LA. There are all these little startups. He's so passionate. He walked into an interview with a drone startup company with his backpack, dumped out his drones on the table. An hour later, he was offered a job because A, he was passionate about it. B, he's just, you know, full of energy. And the job forced my 16-year-old to figure out the best way to balance his studies. He started earning a paycheck. They paid him $20 an hour. And his first paycheck, he was shocked at the amount of taxes that came out of his paycheck.
Aren't they all?
It was amazing. It was just, no matter what I could say, until he had that first paycheck in his hand, he's like, Mom, they took all these taxes. I said, welcome to the real world.
Yeah.
If I could add something on to that, Colleen, I think that one of the things that's important also to teach our young people so no matter what age they start working, if they have the ability to participate in an employer-sponsored savings plan, so a 401k, 403b, whatever, do what you can. I think that is a critical savings component. You know, most employers match up to a certain percentage.
Yeah, people don't realize that's like free money.
It is free money, Colleen.
Absolutely.
In addition to what your paycheck is.
You are leaving that on the table if you're not taking advantage of it. And that was a mistake I made as a young person that I'm now, thanks to the catch-up contributions, I'm able to rectify. But you know, I think that's an important lesson that all of our, you know, participants in this symposium need to take back with them, is if you have the availability to participate in an employee-sponsored plan, do it.
Yep.
So
sign up right away.
And we all agree on that. But let's talk a little bit about student debt, because so many young people are coming out of college these days with not just tens of thousands, but in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Suzanne,
You know,
what would you say to that? I mean, they are starting in the hole before they ever get started.
They are, and I see it with friends of mine. And so, as I mentioned previously, I have two boys. The minute they were born, I started saving money for their college and through 529 plans. So that takes after-tax dollars that starts growing, again, on a compound basis. And fortunately, now 18 years later, my son's entire four-year education is fully funded because I started saving 18 years ago. So I feel awful for these kids that are burdened in this way.
What would you say to young people who are willing to take on that debt? Do they do themselves a disservice? And I'm going to pose that question to all of you.
You know, it's a great question. I personally put myself through college. I had 3 jobs. So I didn't want to take on that debt, if you will, but for the kids that are looking at that right now, to me, it seems like there are so many different educational options, whether that's community college, state college. I think some people get attached to these expensive schools, private schools, et cetera, that you're paying for a name, a brand, et cetera, and you don't have to do that. My son is at a public university in a cornfield in Illinois. He looked at all the different options, and it has the best engineering program that he wanted and the best value. He was accepted to other programs that were twice as much in terms of cost, but he couldn't justify it in his mind because, again, he had worked, he had started saving money, and it made a big difference. So I think people should really look at all their options and not just assume that the most expensive one is necessarily the best one. It's not.
We're talking about value here. Natalia, what would you say to young people about that?
I'm a high proponent of no student loan debt. It really is an additional burden that you have to carry with you before you even get to start a life. And that is like the core of what our organization, for those that choose the college pipeline, what we try to teach them. Because some people are still like 40 years later, it's like a little companion that stays with you. It's like the bill that doesn't go away. Like,
yeah, but not in a nice way.
Not in a nice way. Like if somebody you want to break up with, but they won't let you go, type of situation. And especially for those that might become from low income families, middle income families. I mean, there's the pressures of these branded universities to accept. Some parents are tapping into their 401k or taking on Parent Plus loans. I don't think student loans, Parent Plus loans are the way to go. I will say small amount of loan, something that is very manageable to pay back. I know the federal subsidized loans, something that in the next 5 years, 1 to 5 years, you can pay off pretty easily with a job, I would say. But you really do, going back to Suzanne, have to figure out the value that university is bringing. When I got accepted to Babson, I did a lot of research about the school. I saw that they had a 90% graduation rate, that 90% of their students were employed or in grad school 6 months after graduation. You're going to college to get an education, to have fun, build networks. Well, in COVID, I don't know, that would kind of just going for your education at this point, which is even more important and really to dissect the value that you're getting from it, because it's even harder to create those personalized experiences with professors, et cetera. But you're going there to get employed. You need, in the United States economy, most jobs, it's a certification, it's a requirement. You have to have that 4-year degree to be able to even think about being an employee there, except for some tech startups that are starting to kind of level that playing field out. But it's a certification, so you want to make sure you're going to get the best value from that school. And coming out with $100,000, that's a house. That's experiences, lots of experiences that you could have.
Definitely a house. Melissa, your view on student debt and the kids who are coming out with so much, as Natalia said, like this little friend that accompanies you for decades.
Yeah, it's the bad friend no one wants. You know, it's tough. I guess I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, Colleen, and I think that if you can avoid it, you know, Natalia has a wonderful, and she'd even talk about this herself, is Seeds of Change, and talking about how you can really make yourself available to scholarships. And, you know, there are other opportunities aside from just, you know, the mounting debt. Suzanne talked about, you know, do you choose community college for the first few years? Because oftentimes you can really get into these these more prestigious schools that are feeder schools. So for instance, if you wanted to go to UCLA, which I know, you know, that's the audience of young folks that we're talking to today, that, you know, a lot of the community colleges in the West Side area are feeder schools to UCLA, and it's easier to get in, so that you're not paying the big UCLA dollars from the outset. So that's a great opportunity also.
Bottom line here, I think we're talking about value for the money. Natalia, I want to talk about your scholarship program, and Melissa just touched on that for a moment, specifically for young women of color. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, so Seeds of Fortune is a nonprofit organization that focuses on financially empowering young women of color, but starting with their college education. So we are taking the components of a college education to teach them about money and finances. So every part of the college application process connects back to a real world experience that you're gonna have with money. And going back to your former point, Colleen, about when do you introduce financial literacy? You know, financial literacy is not the sexiest topic, honestly, for some people to want to engage and talk about. And college is something you're going to be pipelined into for the most part, or it's going to be a consideration that comes up. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. So we felt like that was the perfect opportunity to start the conversation with young women about money, about scholarships, and about college. So when the young women come through our program, they are really set up to start thinking long-term about money and how that student loan debt can impact the goals that they have for themselves. So we have them sit down and write a money sheet. What's your 6-month goal? What's your year goal? What's your 5-year goal? 10, 20. A lot of people have not sat down, even adults have not sat down to think about what is money for me? What does it mean to have this? And then the second portion is we started with college and this high school process is because this is the first time for a lot of people, unless you're just like a very like financially literate household in general, that you have to talk about money with your parents because of FAFSA. So you have to know how much your parents make. I literally had no idea what my mom did when she went to work every day. I'm just like, she's at work, she's doing something, she brings home the bacon. But this is the first time, I think, and it's a little, that barrier I said that we have as Americans to kind of taboo money. And it's a conversation you have to have. So we felt like, especially in the minority community, parents and students were going to be having this conversation, and we wanted the girls to be strategic consumers. One, having the conversation about finances with their parents for maybe the first time. And we have a lot of barriers with parents and students when it comes to this, and expectations. So Suzanne, amazing that you and your son were on the same page about that value. And then secondly, we are really able to start to build up skill sets. So interviewing for college scholarships. Same skill set you're going to need to interview for an internship. Same skill set you're going to need to interview for a job. Financial aid packages when they come in. Negotiating with the colleges. You gave me $40,000. I have a gap of $20,000. If you find me as a prime candidate.
That is a great idea. I don't think anyone realized you could do that. But if they want you as a student, it's a relationship here, and that's a great idea.
Yes, negotiation skills. Same skills they're going to take into the workforce. If they can fight for financial aid, they're going to fight for that raise. They're going to fight to negotiate their salary when they get into the workforce. At least think about it. Like, oh, okay, like you're telling me I'm worth 40 entry level, maybe I'm really worth 45. So we really want to take the college experience, something that's relatable to them, and then incorporate it into that as women of color, they're starting to really think strategically about money and bring these financial habits into their world.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but the one thing in my life, my career, that I found so important is mentoring. So when you hit a certain point, you give back. And if you could quickly, again, we're very short on time, quickly address that. And Melissa, I'm going to start with you.
I've had amazing mentors, Colleen, wonderful mentors through the credit union and through my church. That has been invaluable to me. People who saw value, talking about value, people who saw value in me that I didn't see in myself, who gave me the confidence to promote through the organization. And now my turn, it's my turn to be a mentor, to help others, grab the hands of others, particularly young women, and bring them up with me.
It is a sincere form of flattery to have someone come to you and say, will you mentor me or will you help me? Suzanne, your thoughts on that?
Very important, Colleen. I honestly didn't have a mentor, but I decided when I get to a certain point in my career, I'm going to mentor as many people as I can. Every summer, I've brought in a special talented young lady to Western Asset, and they step up to the plate. I basically say, here, I put your resume on top. Now it's your job to sell yourself, walk through the door, etc. I just, provide a certain access, if you will. And it's so important to give back. It's rewarding to me personally. And you see these girls years later, how they thrive and how that us taking time out of our busy days makes a huge difference in the lives of these people.
Nataya.
I would say mentoring is essential. That was how I actually got into this pipeline of college scholarships. I was looking for ways to finance college. I was in the Girl Scouts, shout out to Girl Scouts. And a young woman in my troop, she had gotten $150,000 scholarship to college. And I was like, how did you do that? And her mom had helped her. And I went to her mom. Her mom took 4 to 6 weeks out of the summer to help me package myself for college. And that's really how I found out the strategy is on that there was a strategic way to get money for college. So without that, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. And it's because of that that I decided to start Seeds of Fortune and pour into other girls.
Ladies, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've learned so much today. I've learned that financial literacy is not sexy, but it's oh so important. I may quote you on that down the road. Thank you again. We're also going to have some resources available to you, our audience, as well, to ensure that you can educate yourself on some of these points. Ladies, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Take care.
You too.